And this is what we are facing, is this belief that if somebody is technologically advanced, that they are spiritually advanced. That if somebody is technologically advanced, that they have the right to lead humanity. Look what's happening with our struggle with technocracy today, with Elon Musk, with all these individuals that, we think that they're like geniuses or something because they've created this advanced technology. But technology is not the marker of human advancement. The development of spirit in the form is. So being human is the marker of advancement, and staying human today is the marker of advancement. So we have to really understand these things, because we are going to be really confronted with them. So again, ensoulment was the goal. Yes, there was a period where we had a lot more visitations from beings from other spheres, but again, the Earth was actually in more of an etheric form. And even if you look at the classical diagrams of the solar system and when the planets come alive, most life is actually in the etheric and astral plane. There's very little life actually in the physical plane. And so again, what we're seeing beings that are actually in the lower astral plane. They're trapped in the moon realm. They're fallen angels, or the creation of fallen angels, or, the tulpas of these dark magic groups. A tulpa is something that you actually create with your mind. And you can actually, it's actually pretty crazy. It's Tibetan magic. It's a Tibetan magical word, the word tulpa. Another word for it is egregore. And it's actually pretty incredible, because you can, through your own mind, create different forms, create different things. You can actually create like a monster. You can create, a chimerical figure. And if you feed it with enough energy, if you feed it with enough life force, that being will actually exist on the astral plane, in the lower form of the astral plane. So thoughts are things. And it has been a magical practice for many different secret societies and many different groups to actually come up with these different egregores and create them. And so they do their bidding in the astral plane. And when you encounter them, especially if you're new in spirituality, you may actually think that that is an entity. You may actually think that, oh, that's an alien, or, oh, that's, Jesus, or that's the Buddha, or that's whatever. Or you might actually think that's like a light being or whatever. But really that is just that's just a tulpa, an egregore that was literally created by thought. Right? So what do we do about that? What do we do when it comes to discernment about the reality that you can create a being, or that a group of people can create a being, an entity, and then that entity can literally visit people in dreams? It can appear, if it's powerful enough, it can appear in front of you. This is the same teaching as the golem, as the homunculus. They're considered unnatural forms. And it can actually, if not done right, if not dissolved after a period of time, it can actually, be considered black magic. So why don't we talk about this? If somebody can literally create, a cat being, or a certain alien being with their mind, and that can then begin to actually exist in the lower astral plane around the earth, what do we do about that? How do we discern that? And can we honestly say, as sensitive and psychic people, that some of the things that we encounter are not that? See, this is what I mean about discernment, and understanding that you can have an experience, but then actually understanding that experience is another thing. You can have a real, genuine experience, but we can paint our experience as being something it's not. And we have to be honest with ourselves about that. You know, that's something that is very challenging to understand, because sometimes we don't feel powerful enough to face the reality that we may be lying to ourselves. We begin to build these belief systems, and a lot of it is even just built in other people's belief systems or whatever, and we begin to feel safe in them. And we begin to identify with them. We begin to form communities. We begin to form religions. They're not traditional religions, you know, but it's a dogmatism that we begin to form about our ideas because they're serving us. And it doesn't matter if they're true, or it doesn't matter if they're not true, because you're getting something from them. And for teachers that teach this kind of stuff, they're getting money, they're getting attention, they're getting likes, right? So we have to understand that it's a very slippery slope with this, because there's a lot of things that can be going on that we think are extraterrestrial, that are alien, but it could be a tulpa, you know? It could be, you know, it could be a genuine entity just from the lower planes. It could be something from a past life that is genuinely associated with another sphere. But there's lots of different things that could be going on. And I think the first thing we need to do is to hash out what those are, if we want to be honest with our unfoldment. So when we understand that ensoulment was always the goal, you know, the whole reason why the gods, what people think are the gods, or the divine humans, or the angels came, was really so that they could ensoul. That's really why they were helping the human form evolve. In the Polarian epoch, they beamed their consciousness down. The angelic hierarchies and the divine humans of that time beamed their consciousness down and gave humanity the developing planet and this developing material plane, which was in more of an etheric phase. It gave all of the patterns and seeds and archetypes that were going to evolve. That was in the Polarian phase of our evolution. And then we moved downwards, and we go into the Hyperborean epoch, where we first see the first sense of duality, the first manifestation of these things. And then, you know, the Lemurian phase, sometimes called the moon phase of development, we see the first signs of physicality come about. And we see, you know, we begin to see humans walking with the gods more the same as did in the past, but more individuated. And then in Atlantis, you see us getting our eye, and then you see the ensoulment. And so really what we're looking at with the creation of the cosmos is, it's really about helping a certain form develop. They eventually develop faculties that are beyond you. So there was a point when we were in the Atlantean level of development where the human body template, the human form template, had more spiritual potential than the Venusian one did, right? And that's why ensoulment happens, is because eventually the only way to evolve for those beings really is to incarnate into the form. And this is something that is often not understood, is that it's that process of ensoulment and the transformation of the form through the soul and through spiritualization that actually leads to human evolution. And it was actually a very long process of metamorphosis that formed the human being. And these angelic beings were there the entire time, non-physical, and at times they did walk amongst us. But at no point in that development was anything ever done from the outside in. So this whole idea of the creation of humanity from the outside in is a fabrication, and it is the exact lie and the exact story of the fallen angels. And what I mean by the outside in is the idea that human beings were created by aliens. that human beings were created by those fallen, because that's what it is. If the fallen angels are the fallen Venusians, right? Which is where you get the alien aspect of it. But that was not the creation of humanity. But people think that it is, because the only thing that people feel comfortable looking at is the potential that there was a genetic modification. And people don't feel comfortable investing in spiritual understanding. They only want to deal with the most obvious thing. And it just so happens that the path of the fallen angels, the teachings of the fallen angels, the idea of the fallen angels is completely and totally materialistic. And it is outside in. You know, they raped their way into humanity by forcing human women to create the Nephilim. They forced their way into humanity by doing genetic modification, right? They're still forcing their way into humanity by abduction experiences, but now they're more associated with grays and these chimerical entities, and they look absolutely grotesque at this point because they're so degenerated. So the fallen angels no longer look like the angelic figures that they once did. They now look absolutely grotesque and scary, because that's what happens when you don't evolve with the life wave, is you degenerate and you deform, and eventually your whole appearance takes on the nature of your being. And so now when they come around as absolutely demonic forms and demonic, fearful, terrifying energies. And they also have various different beings like gray aliens or different, bug looking like beings and stuff like that, that basically they're partly ensouled in, or they use to carry out their genetic manipulation now. But again, this whole thing from the outside in, they're forcing themselves into humanity from the outside in, because they could not ensoul. And because they couldn't ensoul, they were facing a life of basically to be completely sucked backwards and reamalgamated and starting over again. And the forms that they could have taken at that point, they didn't want, because they did have an option, according to various different religious scripts, that there was an option to incarnate into some human animals. So there were certain Atlantis was, and even like at the Atlantean time, there were lots of different types of forms. They created lots of different types of forms because it was this weird place of pliability where you could still do these things. It wasn't as locked down as it is today. So they created lots of forms, these darker magicians did, to ensoul these dark angels. But also there were lots of different kinds of humans. It's kind of like Lord of the Rings. And so there were certain human forms that were on Earth that don't exist today, that were kind of closer to an animal. And again, they don't exist today. And so there was an opportunity for these fallen angels to incarnate into these sort of lower forms that were at an animal level of consciousness. And the reality why they had to have those forms, which the fallen angels thought they were too good for, that they were too ugly, too rudimentary for them. The reason why they couldn't have a higher human form that was developing on the planet as well, which is basically our form, the form of everybody on the planet. Yes, every race on the planet, every human form on the planet today is that template, okay? So the reason why they couldn't have that form was because there were certain organs of perception and there was a finer system developed. So the human form that was carried over from Atlantis was very advanced. It had a lot of potential in it. It had a lot of seeds in it. that would come to bloom, namely the eye, the individuality, but also just other organs of perception, not necessarily physical organs, but organs of perception in the aura. And a very fine nervous system. It was very finely tuned compared to where it was in Lemuria. And because the fallen angels did not participate in that development, they spent their time trying to govern humanity, trying to control humanity, trying to make humanity worship them. And so they actually weren't part of that process of that last leg of development of the human form. And because they weren't part of that last leg of development with the human form, where the Venusians were working with the solar fathers and the solar forces in order to create this body that could eventually receive the sun, which happens in our post-Atlantean epoch with the incarnation of Christ. And so we needed a form that could receive the sun, that would lead to our spiritualization and would eventually allow us to become a solar human or a completely spiritualized human, which is associated in anthroposophy with the Vulcan stage, or in the Eastern Mysteries Atman stage, the spiritualized form. And so we needed to have that developed. We needed to have a form developed by that period of time that could receive the sun, which is all and everything. And so that Venusian impulse was doing that, and they were the mitigator as the divine humans in the solar system, the most materialized divine humans in the solar system at that time. They were playing the role of the mediator, and they were working upon humanity as directly as possible in order to prepare the human form and that developing human consciousness in Atlantis to one day become the sun, to one day become a solar being, or one day reach this incredible level of exalted consciousness that we associate with the sun. All right. So we could fully spiritualize our physicality, but everything had to be in place at that period of time. And so the only beings that could incarnate into a form at that point were the beings who were still connected to the Father, still connected to the solar logos, the sun, and that were actually connected to the Christ stream in Atlantis. This is the Emilius group in the Casey work. In the Theosophical work, this group would be called, I think, the Lords of the Light. The Lords of the Dark Face are the fallen angels in Theosophy, and the Belial group is the fallen angels in the Casey work. So I hope that lays it out for you. But really, there was a very advanced group that was really, they weren't really doing it, for themselves. They were doing it because they were embodying that solar impulse and translating it, which is the deep mystery there, is that Venus absorbs the sun and gives 1/3 of that absorption to the earth. So that was happening literally when this advanced group of Venusian beings, future divine humans in the cosmos, came to the earth when humans were at that more animal-like consciousness and began beaming that 1/3 of their own light, of their own so these were divine humans from Venus, and the earth at that time was less dense, so this was possible. It's not possible where we are now, okay? We have to understand that at certain levels of development on the earth, certain things are possible. Certain things become impossible at certain times. We have to understand that things happen in windows. So at this window, like Lemuria to Atlantis, the earth was a lot closer to the spiritual realms. Everything was more interconnected, and it was a lot easier to work upon the physical form. And in fact, that was one of the major themes of Atlantis. And so you had great initiates that came as divine humans from Venus, the best of the best, and they gave 1/3 of their own life essence to humanity. They sacrificed, in many ways, at the end of it there, pretty much all of their life essence for humanity, so that humanity could have a structure to rise out of matter, so it would not fall too far away from the sun, to give humanity a form and a nervous system and the spiritual pathways in their higher body so they could actually rise out of matter one day. And this is why when you read the Bible, it associates Christ with the morning star, with Venus. Now, again, you'll have people who kind of think like a baseball bat, or they think very literally, very materialistically, and they say, well, Jesus was an alien. That means that Jesus was an alien. No, Jesus said that you are understanding Christ's spiritual lineage, and you're understanding something about the soul, and you're understanding a very, very deep core cosmic mystery of how planets and human beings advance in the solar system by taking on the sun and by coming from the planetary sphere that represents the future of the earth. But again, by the time we're in the post-Atlantean epoch, our phase, halfway through Atlantis, we're not talking about like an alien. You know, it's very dangerous when you start to have this charge in society where suddenly every advanced spiritual teacher is an alien. Every structure that is megalithic, that is complex, that's aligning with Sirius or Orion, that is because they're aliens. Again, this is the fallen angel pattern of infantilizing humanity and trying to introduce basically fallen angels to humanity as gods. And also those who have worshipped the fallen angels as gods, who have been preparing this narrative and doing this for a long period of time. Okay? So there are secret societies, I talk about them in Mars Mysteries, that have been in contact and serving fallen angels for a very long time. There are entire secret societies that are all about this. This is their spiritual belief. This is their origin myth. This is what they believe. This is how deluded they are. And they have a whole system that they want to introduce to the world that basically is their weird fallen angel belief system. And in that belief system, they like to make every single holy figure an alien. They like to make every single, pyramid, every single megalith. This is, ancient aliens. This is like an alien built this, because there's no understanding, or maybe this understanding just denies them too much power to rule over people. But there's no understanding that there is an overlapping that occurs at certain times, again, where beings from other spheres can come in, but those beings incarnate into humanity. There's literally no point in calling the gods aliens, because the only kinds of gods that would ever appear as aliens are basically fallen angels or demons. They're going to be a dark entity that comes from the eighth sphere, to speak as plainly as possible. No genuine advanced spiritual figure is going to present themselves that way. And we actually have a system on the earth that is called the spiritual hierarchies. And it is absolutely full of adepts and spiritual masters that have graduated beyond certain phases of the earth through a very understandable process of initiation. And this has been on the earth and part of the earth for tens of thousands of years. In the Eastern system, this is the tradition of the Buddha, the Bodhisattva, right? And the different levels of the Buddha. In Theosophy, this is the different initiations, the first initiation, the second initiation, the third initiation. These are all very human things. The idea that you have to be an alien to be advanced is absolutely backwards and ridiculous, because it's actually the other way around. Earth is such an advanced school that the ultimate prize, the ultimate goal is to go through the solar system school and develop yourself to the point where you can actually incarnate naturally as a human. where you can actually take on the human form. Because if you can actually naturally take on the human form, it means that you've gone through a very high level of soul development in the cosmos. Because at one point, remember, even the Venusians incarnated into the human form, and they were the most kind of divine human at that time. So yeah, that's really the key to understand with beings from other spheres. Is it's not kind of like a weird free-for-all where like all these beings are coming from different spheres and like from all these deep in space with advanced technology. We don't understand where they're coming from. We don't know who they are. Humanity is basically like a child, like a sitting duck, just waiting for these galactic federations and these aliens to just finally gift us with their technology. What a joke. Technology is not the mark of a genuinely advanced civilization. It's actually what certain dark occult groups do to convince people that they are advanced. Because what you do is you take technologies that were already on the earth from Atlantis. Okay, we had a very high civilization in Atlantis. We had advanced crafts. We had free energy. We existed that way. We had advanced schools of initiation. So you take that science and technology and you develop it. You hide it from humanity, keep humanity on, the petrodollar and all this lower technology. You privately advance that technology, right? And then one day you appear as a god. Because privately, these secret societies that are associated with fallen angels, these dark groups, in the dark journalist work, this is called X-Protect. X-Protect. And you quietly develop and re-engineer all of that technology for this age and the complications that are of this particular epoch. It's a different epoch than Atlantis, so you do have to re-engineer it a little bit. And maybe you get some weird technology from interdimensionals or whatever. And then one day you keep humanity at an absolute low point. Hundreds, if not thousands of years behind. You don't initiate humanity as you know things. You keep humanity in the dark, and you gather up all the power that you can socially and politically. You hoard it all. And then one day, when you're ready, you think you're going to take it all. You're going to introduce all of this advanced technology. Maybe even aliens. Maybe even there's been some genetic programs going on to make human beings from the earth look like aliens. Look like these Aryan Nordic beings, maybe not. And then through this glamorization of technology that heals, make people fight about oil for what, a decade, 5 years? Keep humanity at absolute war and bring them into a slow destitution until they're mere shadows of themselves. Wear them down through war, stress, hunger, until they begin to betray themselves, until they begin to forget what their inner light is. Make it so difficult that one day, even your technology and even you can rule them as a fallen presence. But let me tell you, they know deep down inside of themselves that they're fallen. And they know that humanity must be broken to accept them. And so look at everything that's going on around you now, today. All the strife, all the turmoil. And understand that the higher reason why all of this is going on is to introduce to you a new paradigm. A new paradigm that is not holy, It's not advanced. It's not from another world. It's not from our creators. It's not from gods, whatever. It's none of those things. These are things that were created here in back rooms that your tax dollars paid for. These are technologies that have been in existence for hundreds, if not thousands of years, that were held back so that they could be introduced to a desperate population one day. And humanity would be so desperate for it that they wouldn't question. Because a happy society, a developing society, has enough power within themselves to question everything. But if you can degrade humanity through war, through constant trauma, through all of the stuff that's going on now, psychological operations, false flags, all of that, if you can do that, you can supplant a new system and people will actually support it. So please understand that this is just another phase of what happened in Atlantis. This is nothing new. The fallen angels haven't gone anywhere. And actually, they're doing a very good job of convincing everyone that they are the angels, that they are your creators, that they are gods. And even sometimes I think maybe people understand that force is not holy. Force is never holy. Forcing, going in and taking a form and genetically modifying it. Playing God like this is not holy. That's force. There is no power in force. It shows weakness. And so maybe people on some level, they do understand that these beings are fallen. But the tragedy is that they don't have any more information. They don't have the information on the Christ stream, the regenerative stream, and the organic stream. And so there's also a deception in the reality that nobody talks about the fact that humanity already was developing and that there is a stream of humanity that's never modified, that's never fallen, that exists parallel to the fallen one. But if you only believe in the fallen system, if you constantly perpetuate the Anunnaki story and that humans were created by aliens and aliens go out there and seed worlds, you are part of that. And not only are you part of that, you are only acknowledging the worst possible part of human history. And by only acknowledging that, you are participating in it and you are perpetuating it. Because the correct way to teach this and understand this is to share both sides. It is to talk about the path of the fallen angels. Absolutely. We better. But it is to also talk about the path of the angels that never fell and of the aspect of humanity that never fell. Because that is actually the power that is going to initiate you. That's actually the thing that you want to connect with. The stream of the fallen angels is truly alien. It is truly evil. It is truly degeneration. And we have so much of our natural form and so much of our natural spirit still that, for a lot of people, they'll have to dissolve that and destroy that a lot more before they realize it. It's easy to have the form, the kind of perfect template we have now that hasn't been through transhumanism, that hasn't been through generations of genetic modification. And by the way, what I want to say about things like CRISPR and genetic modification is that you can't actually take a disease or a trait and get rid of it from the human population. Okay. The reason why certain diseases, certain traits, certain things happen on the earth is because there's a reason for it. So you can't come in and get rid of something in a genetic code and think that that's going to get rid of it for humanity or get rid of it for that soul's experience that's going to be born. Because getting rid of it in a genetic code does not get rid of it in the cosmos, right? This is the outside in. You can't use genetic engineering to get rid of qualities that you don't like, even diseases, because eventually, after several generations, that thing will come back. Whatever it is you're trying to get rid of will come back 3 times as worse or more times as worse. Because just simply changing the human body's ability to express it does not get rid of it in the cosmos. It doesn't get rid of it in the greater system of humanity. You're just stopping this form from expressing it now. So we have to understand that, we may be getting to the point where we can play God, but you can't actually play God, because we cannot stop spiritual impulses from existing. And this is why when you get into the highest schools of initiation and connecting with the highest spirits of initiation, the masters, all these very highly initiated people and beings, it's all about alignment. It's all about harmonization, and it's all about entering into sometimes the most broken things and loving and taking it on. It's actually not about trying to get rid of these things. It's about knowing that you are God within, it's knowing that you are a holy being. And that part of how you strengthen yourself, part of how you empower yourself, part of how you empower others in the world is by going into the most broken things and loving them. By going into the most broken, dark aspects of yourself and forgiving and loving and sitting with them in such absolute compassion that they begin to change. And when we get good enough at doing that with ourselves, sitting in absolute love and compassion with ourselves, we then get the privilege of doing that with others and being that force in others' lives. And that is the highest honor. It is the highest honor and the highest privilege to teach, to be with people in that state, to heal. There is no higher position for any human being than that. And that is why when you get to a very advanced, masterful level of initiation, that's pretty much all you do, is enter into the darkest nights. So what we are doing, what we are on the precipice of, is not right. It doesn't lead to evolution. Our job is to sit with what we feel like needs healing, not try to remove it from the face of the earth, not try to stop it from existing, because it doesn't work. It's inside out. Our emotions are alchemical forces. Our spirit is an alchemical force that changes our form, that heals our body, and that eventually leads our body to transcend matter. And we're not going to do that if we think that we're going to engage in CRISPR, engage in genetic modification. There is no shortcut. There is no easy path. This is spiritual materialism. This isn't a spiritual thing to do. This is completely seeing the world in a materialist way. There are no shortcuts. Whatever is imbalanced must be loved. Whatever is imbalanced must be seen. And only then may it be transformed. And may we all have the courage to do that with ourselves and others while we are broken as well. But there is no escape. There is no escape from the outside in. Okay? And this goes for transhumanism as well. So I'm going to end this lecture here, and I'm going to continue on going a little bit deeper into this for next week.